Welcome to season 2, episode 1 of the Tangents podcast. I'm laughing because this is the second time we're recording
it's not the second
this.
time. It's the first time. This is the first
Absolutely.
time that we're ever recording this.
We are one take and done. That's all we ever do.
We just cut right there.
Anyway, hey, so it's a new year. It's the same us, unfortunately. But we're going to have, hopefully for better, right? We're going to have some new, not new direction, but new focusing. So here in the Tangents podcast, as you know, we will get off topic, but that's this journey that we call life. One thing leads naturally into another. But today we were going to start with a blue episode, which is one of our more focused episodes. However, before we get into that, I wanted to talk about, if you noticed on our Instagram, posted and pinned to the top, you have a new little glimpse of our posting schedule. But hey, Anthony, you know where else you can find a glimpse of our posting schedule?
Where else, Victor? Please tell me, where can I find a glimpse of
you can go to this place called Patreon.com, where we have a Patreon. So at the start of season 2 of the Tangents podcast, we wanted to really start to focus on some other projects and goals and things that we've been working on behind the scenes in this umbrella concept, this umbrella idea called the Realm of Logres, and maybe even one day doing an episode where we explain what that means. It is not the land of ogres, but
listen, I don't know. We could be pretty ogreish.
Yeah, but it's a transliteration that we will get into later. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, there are some things that we've been working on. And so we've got 2 tiers that are active right now on our Patreon. You can go at our card link on all of our current social media right now. It should be up there and you can see where that is, but I'll just tell you. So the first tier that we
YouTube video, it'll be on the about page of the YouTube, it'll be on Instagram, it'll be all over the place.
Right. So the first tier is just called our Alpha Reader. I've been working on one of my personal goals for this year is I am writing a book, and I would like it's a fiction book, and I would working on it on a specific schedule as if it is my job. And my goal is to have it ready for professional editing, I'll say, meaning my hands are off it at that point, because I can read the same thing that I have written 5 times and I will edit it. Like, not that I will edit and change it five times.
More than 5 times, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So basically, by the end of 2023, I want it to be ready to be out of my hands into someone else's hands to just go through it for grammatical fixes, and then ready for publication. What I'm going to be doing at that first tier, the Alpha Reader tier, is once a month, I will be releasing previews of each of the chapters as I've written them. So they might not be exactly how they're going to appear in the final publication of the book, because, like I said, edits do need to be done. I created a weird labor law time anomaly where there's a shop that Karen pointed out in the first chapter of my book that has one set of employees that work from open until close, and it is open for 12 hours. That's apparently illegal.
7 days.
And I did not. No, actually not. It
really?
is closed on. It is closed one day out of the week.
Oh, okay. I feel like that covers it.
For family, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so there will be things that go out there. Right now, you can go onto our Patreon, Realm of Logres, and you can read that first chapter for free, even without a subscription, because I would like people to know what they're getting into, what they're supporting, besides just the podcast. The second tier I refer to as Wrinkle Your Brain. And basically what you get with the Wrinkle Your Brain level tier is you get early access to this podcast one day before it goes onto YouTube and drops in all the other places where you will listen to your favorite podcast, as well as an additional podcast. So you get to hear us once a week, or twice a week, but not really. because the second podcast is just going to be a midweek podcast. It's going to be short. It's just going to be midweek meditations. You'll get access to that. However, if you look on your feed, because we're recording this in the past for the future, in the first episode of Midweek Meditation should be in the main feed right now, again, so you kind of get a feel of them. And listen, they're not expensive. There's 2 tiers. They're not far apart from each other in dollar amount. And the only reason why we're doing this is, like I said, we've got more projects that we want to do, content that we'd like to create. And this is honestly just a way that will help support us in not doing these things, which we're already doing for free right now, but help us do more of the things that we want to do.
Well, you know what is something that we want to do?
What?
We want to talk about a book that we've already talked about called
That's right.
Leopard.
The Supple Leopard. The Return to the Supple Leopard. We have mentioned this.
The return.
What?
So this is
the return. This is the return. Yeah, we've mentioned this 2 other times in the podcast in the last season.
Yeah.
Basically, one of the guys that also trains under my kung fu instructor, at a conference, a seminar that Anthony and I were mutually at, just mentioned this book, and I went online and bought it. It was on sale because this is the 2nd edition. I believe the author is working on a 3rd edition, or they have a website that has more current, up-to-date stuff going on. But yeah, so it was very inexpensive, and it is by far very much worth it. I like to do the same caveat that we do with a lot of the books that we read, being that I am approaching this book as a student, not at all claiming any expertise in this, aside from the fact that I do have some knowledge in physical fitness field and in the body mechanics field, but I am approaching this as a student. I had no idea that this book existed until someone brought it to my attention. Therefore, that's kind of what I was hoping that we could do, is bring it to the attention of whoever is listening to this or watching.
You read the book. I have not read the book, and I'm interested to see what kind of insight it can bring.
Yeah, so if your body ever hurts just from walking around, this is a great book. If your body doesn't hurt, but you want to be better at movement, this is a great book. So it was written by a guy named Kelly Starrett, who is a doctor of physical therapy. He's written other books, but he wrote this book, like I think I said before, in 2013. He's a speaker and a CrossFit trainer. He's been featured on the New York Times bestseller sports book list, and he is the co-founder with his wife Juliet of a fitness website called The Ready State. It's formerly called Mobility WOD, W-O-D, Workout of the Day, but it is now I like the name change so much better. And as we get into the contents of the book, you'll understand this a lot more, the name change, and we'll have links, I'm sure, in the show notes to his stuff, and maybe even to the Amazon link to where you can purchase the book yourself.
Sure.
Like I said,
it's $35.
It's a textbook, and it is so amazing. And what he said is, if you are in the physical fitness field, be a personal trainer, physical therapy, anything like that, he suggests that you read the book starting at the beginning, going through the middle, and into the end. However, if you're not, the book is ordered in such a way that you can really approach it from a couple different perspectives and in a couple different directions. And I think that that's really cool. It is a tool of knowledge more so than a book to read and then just stick on the shelf. Like it's on my shelf next to my ACE personal training manual, which is like my go-to manual for exercises and information. It's like my workout encyclopedia. This is right next to it with all of my other books that are manuals to be revisited, not to be read and then stuck on the shelf behind me.
So how did you read the book? I'm curious because you said, for medical professionals, it's recommended that you read from cover to cover, start to end. How did you read the book? How did you go through the book? What kind of things were you looking for in it? Give me the breakdown. What's going on?
Okay, so the book itself is arranged into 3 categories. Part 1 is his basic theories behind mobility, because that's all what this is about. It's about mobility training, the economy of motion, and I'm going to say theory, but it's really a proven theory, is that the human body is a machine that is designed for movement and designed for crazy movements, but the reason why we hurt ourselves as humans is that we take ourselves out of the planes in which we're designed to move, and we put ourselves under strain in those movements. And it then, like every machine is rated for, this engine can turn over how many hundreds of thousands of times before it needs a tune-up. He postulates that the human body is the same way, but when we lift something wrong, when we bend wrong, we still do the motion. Our body is still capable of doing the motion, but we've just used up some of that allotted thing, and we've broken the oh my gosh, what's it called? The warranty.
Oh yeah, you've broken the warranty. You've done too much.
We violated the warranty, and therefore we've brought ourselves closer to needing maintenance sooner than we naturally would have.
Got it.
And so that's really all what the first part is about, explaining the economy and efficiency of motion, as well as some anecdotes, things like that. Part 2, he goes into what he calls the categories of motion. There's 3 categories of motion in which he himself theorizes, and again, he's a physical therapy guy. He's a CrossFit guy.
He's a PhD
so he's an MD.
Okay.
He is a doctor. And so he talks about how all movements can be broken down into these 3 categories. And so it's really intriguing to see how he does that. And it's interesting because I've always said this as my own as a personal trainer myself. I hate bench pressing, right?
Wow, you're so weird.
Not in doing it, but I don't like doing it with a bar in the traditional sense, because this is a motion. If you are just listening to this and not watching, I'm pretending to hold a bench press barbell, and pushing it forward. This motion is great at isolating my muscles that I want to grow. However, the hand position, the shoulder position, all of that is not a motion that I do naturally in life. I prefer dumbbell presses to where I can have my hands more naturally at a 45-degree angle, because this motion, just adjusting your wrists at that 45 puts your body into a motion where you're building muscles that you want, maybe not as targeted as you may like, but you're building all of the muscles in your body more cohesively as a unit, in a way that you can directly translate to life. And that's all about what he does. Like, his mobility theory is whatever you're doing in the gym should directly translate into what you want to do in real life. So the way that you...
So it's like a one-to-one translation from like what you want to do to what you're doing.
The way that you bend down and do like a deadlift, that should be the same motion that you use if you work in a warehouse to bend down and pick up a box, right? If you are an Olympic sprinter, the things that you do in the gym for strength training should be a one-to-one translation of those same movements that you're going to do when your body is doing its thing in your competitive field.
Okay.
And so part 2 breaks down all of those motions into like a hyper specific like intricacies of what those movements are. And then part 3, which is I think the coolest thing, is so part 3 is it's called mobilization techniques. So this is for corrective and optimizations, and it's basically the whole end of the book is organized according to muscle groups. Like it show like the scan of a muscular skeletal structure,
Mm-hmm.
and it highlights the different muscle groups that you're going through, and then gives you specific exercises on how to increase mobility. So a lot of and not just increase the mobility, but on how to diagnose why you're not able to do something. So it'll be like, are you having pain
Like
in
shoulder
your
pain.
knee?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. If you're having pain in your knee, okay, this is what you can do to help build up the muscles around your knee, help, loosen the tendons that might be pinched so that you can build up your muscles build up your knee dexterity
Yeah.
to it.
Well, let's start there. Let's go further into, because I'm curious as to what are like some of the ways that you can go about. Obviously, you don't want to self-diagnose if you're having severe pain or
Right.
whatever. Go seek like medical help.
Mhm.
But it's good to be able to have an eye, like understanding your own body. I think is important.
Right.
Understanding why
So
your
one of
body
the
does certain things, why your body feels a certain way. I feel like is an important thing to just like living, because you're with your body 24/7. So what are some of the things? Let's get into that part.
So the final note that I was going to make in regards to if you're just any Tom, Dick, or Harry reading this book, or
What?
if you've never heard that phrase before?
No,
If you're any Tom, Dick, or Harry?
I've never heard that phrase before.
Anyway, if you're just any Joe Schmo off the street,
Okay, I have heard that.
reading this book, what I would recommend, the 30 or 33 page introduction before part 1, read that and then skip around, because at least that explains a little bit of how he goes into what it means to be a supple leopard. The story behind that is an interesting anecdote in which he says that like his whole idea is he was watching this video. I think I mentioned it during our Christmas episode. He was watching a movie with his dad, and it was a movie about an Olympic runner, and his coach would always tell him to run like a leopard, no, be a leopard. And he's saying like a leopard is always ready for movement. If you look at how leopards' body muscular structure is, they're always ready to move. They never like suddenly like lunge out at something and they're like, oh, I tweaked my back. And one of the reasons, and he tells a story of a friend of his who told him this, is that leopards don't need to stretch. Their muscles are always limbered up and ready for movement. Thus the change in the name, the ready state. We as humans have to stretch.
Got it.
So instead of having the genetic advantage of always being supple, but to train your body
I wish I had the genetic advantage of always being supple.
Right, yeah. To always have the genetic, to always train our bodies so that we are ready to move.
Got
so
it.
that
Okay.
we are most like a supple leopard. So I recommend reading the first 30 pages and then skipping around if you're just looking for the book's content, the meat of it.
Mm-hmm.
In the second category, it's going to talk about the categories of movements. It's in 3. Category 1 movements are those one-to-one daily life movements that you can do. So things that you can do on the gym, like we're talking about, like deadlift motion being the same as
Right.
bending down to lift a heavy box. Movements 2 and 3 categories are more sports specific. So that's another way that if you're not an athlete and you're just into this to kind of browse and peruse and you want to see what these movements are, what the body positions, in part 1, he separates things into the 7 archetypal forms, meaning that there are only 7 forms that your body posture is supposed to be in. So every movement that you do either starts in one of the four, should always start in one of the 7 archetypes and end in one of the 7 archetypes.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
and
that
that's
makes
for
sense.
good structure and body posture. So again, if you just want to look about, hey, I hurt when I walk up the stairs, and you want to know about the categories of movements, category 2 and 3 aren't really going to be for you right now.
Right, you just want to worry
Start
about the
looking
stuff
into
that's like the
category 1.
daily movement, the
Right.
category 1
You
stuff.
want to optimize your body's daily function. So then, and this is a really cool graphic that we'll put up here, is the start of part 3, which is the mobilization techniques, and it shows you this whole layout map of the human muscular structure and different target areas. So you've got area 1, which is the jaw, head, and neck. Area 2 is the upper back. 3, posterior shoulders, lats. Area 4, anterior shoulders and chest. And so it just moves down your body. So this is the part of the book that is for more corrective and optimization, not really meant to basically read in order. This is the first part that I opened to.
Right, because it just goes from, like, the top
anything
down, right? It just
right,
goes from, like,
it just goes from the top down. I had a crick right here in my neck. Like, I was at the point where, like, I couldn't touch my ear to my shoulder without pain. Like I couldn't even move that far as you moved. Like
I never thought of trying to test that. Like, I was like, can I even touch my ear to my shoulder?
And there's a whole bunch of stuff in part 1 that's all about mobility, like, and stability checks for you to do and to go through with your body. So
that's actually kind of cool.
I went right into this. And if you flip over to the first page, there's different levels. So there's level 1 mobility tools, which is like a foam roller, a yoga ball, an alpha ball, and
what is an alpha ball?
Call it a corrective ball. Okay, so I refer to them as murder balls.
Okay, that doesn't help me at all, but sure.
A lacrosse ball.
Oh, okay. That's an alpha ball?
I think that's more along the line of a yoga tune-up ball, where an alpha ball is the same thing. Like, think of that thickness and density of
right, like a thick, dense rubber,
but bigger.
It's like a medicine ball,
right? But not so much you're not using it for the weight of it. You're using it for something solid to massage your muscle against.
Got it. So it's like.
So actually, I'll read the definitions.
Then, huh?
Right. So foam rollers are good for contract and relax, sending pressure waves, and smash and floss. To be blunt, foam rollers are fine for beginners and children, but to affect the kind of change an athlete would need or for top performance, you need a tool that can penetrate deeper into your tissues. So foam rollers are for beginners.
Right, so you don't damage your muscles trying to fix them.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Yoga or tune-up balls, so they contract and relax. They're good for pressure waves, floss, tack, and twist. So basically, when you press the ball into a shoulder, you press deep into the muscle tissue and you twist the ball so that you get twisting of the fascia of the muscle.
What is the fascia? Tell me about
that. Fascia is I refer to it when I talk to it in layman's terms. I call them the vanity muscles and the fine muscles.
Got it.
Vanity muscles are the type of muscles that you see, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are
like,
your pecs. Right. Whereas the fascia is the muscle tissue. You want to think of that as it's probably a better explanation, but I always think of it as the fine muscles that connect the larger muscle groups to your nervous system.
Got it. Okay.
They're actually the more important part of your muscles.
Right.
They're the part of your muscles that allow the large muscle groups to do those motor functions.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, because they're buried right? Because they're
Right.
buried for their own protections. That's the part that gets knotted up, twisted up, and that will limit your range of motion. Like I talk all the time about how your hip joints and your shoulder joints are ball and sockets.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Like a ball and socket joint has near, and I think it's your neck up here too. But you should have near 360-degree motion.
Yeah, the limiter is
Omnidirectional.
Yeah.
Right. The limiter is the muscle. So some people, like, we had an uncle. Our uncle Michael couldn't touch his shoulder. He wasn't a big dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wasn't jacked, but he could not, like, touch his shoulder with this. Like, he couldn't take his right hand and touch his right shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And that had nothing to do with, being swole. It had to do with a mobility body mechanics thing with his tendons, his fascia being so tight to the point where it would lock at a certain degree. And that's what a lot of things come down to with people.
Is the inner working of the fascia?
Yeah, right. And so that's what part 3 is all about, is on how to get into that deep tissue.
So you might not have an answer to this.
To break the mobility up.
Yeah, you might not have an answer to this, but I'm curious, given the topic of this conversation, I wonder if the book touches upon it at all. Is there any kind of a limiter? Like, obviously you can only do as much as your fascia will allow you. Mm-hmm. But is there any limiter to training that fascia, to unlocking it, to allow you to do other things? Like, is that like a genetic thing, or is that just something that you're predisposed to that you need to train, that most people just don't either recognize or don't train?
Well, again, and this is all, like, if you want, like, kind of these deep, it's weird because it's a physical fitness thing, but there's a lot of philosophical, idealistic things within this. And like in part 1, you want to think about body optimization, and even the top tier athletes are not always ready for movement.
Right.
And even those that are ready for movement in their field of athleticism aren't ready necessarily for the same level of movement in a different body mechanic way. So his
like, a runner might not be ready to just dive into a pool and start swimming.
Right. His whole theory behind the body mobility that he lays out very, very deeply in part 1 is that the human body is built for hundreds of thousands of rotations through mobility cycles.
Yeah.
That are crazy complex. And we just either go through those cycles, but incorrectly, to the point where we're damaging the machine that is our body, thus clogging the gears and making things not work the way that they do. Or we go through them wrong, and then your body basically, it's like habits, right?
Yeah, your body it's like,
oh shit, here we go again.
Your body will get you through that motion, and the more times that you do that motion incorrectly, your body then thinks, well, that's the way to do it. And so it starts growing its fascia, growing the muscle structure in order to do those motions incorrectly.
Interesting.
Without realizing that what it's doing, is the compensation. Right? The compensation is compromising another part of your structure. So it's not that you can't do something this way. It's that you doing it that way is sacrificing something else.
Yeah.
The good example that he gets in is, as a physical therapist, I love this story. He said that the majority of knee injuries that he sees, when he sees people who come in who need anything from like knee rehabilitation to full-on reconstruction, what do you think the demographic is?
I feel like this is a trick question, but I'm gonna say like 30s and 40s.
For what purpose?
What do you mean, for what purpose?
Like how do you think? 30s or 40s?
Oh, lifting stuff.
Okay. It is 40s to 50s.
Okay.
Male basketball injury.
Basketball.
Right?
Interesting. Okay.
Because think about this. Like you're like as a 20-year-old, and this is what it says. As a 20-year-old, think about how you play basketball. Basketball is high intensity, high pivoting. Right? You're always running back and forth through the court. How many athletes in their 20s and early 30s, right?
Do wrong movements.
Do suicide runs and pivot wrong, right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. You've got a young body. We've all seen, like, I remember, right? I'm 34, right? I'm gonna be 35 this year, right? I've already noticed how my body heals at a slower rate than it did when I was in my 20s, let alone when I was 18, 17. Right? So when you're doing those things, he's saying that your body is compensating in ways to make you do those quick pivots. But then when you get in your 40s, your muscles are used to doing it that way. But your 40-year-old knees
don't like it, yeah.
Don't like it. And so what happens is you think, I'm going to do pickup basketball like I always do with the boys, and you go to pivot and your knee just says nope, and it snaps or it twists in the way that it's not supposed to do.
Right.
And it's not because your body is weak, it's because you've trained your body to not use itself properly.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's like that's and I know I've mentioned
that seems to be like that seems like a core concept of this book.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned the animal flow stuff that I was getting into at the end of last year and that I really want to get into more this year. And like that's what animal flow is about. When we went through that period of time where we were walking on our hands, right?
Yeah.
Like for a minute plus a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not for like a day and a minute, but like we would do it for a minute and then the next day we do it for 2 minutes. Like there's a wrong way to do that and there's a right way to do that. When we were doing it, I can tell you right now, I was doing it incorrectly because I was sore in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
After looking at this animal flow stuff and reading the introduction about like not leaning, but pressing into the ground, whenever I'm on my hands to engage the fascia and the muscle structure within my shoulders completely, it changed the way how I would do my animal flow. It changed the way how I would support my body and go through those different ranges of motion. So generally speaking, going back to the three categories of mobility, of movement, if you're in category 1, just basic movement, right? Not for athleticism, not for sports, you would want to be doing these level 1 mobilization tools. And again, like, I mean, he shows them a lot of the mobilization tools that he lists, right? Foam roller, yoga tune-up ball, alpha ball, or courageous ball, which is like one of those just giant inflatable balls.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
It's like a big yoga ball, but that you can lean against. I have an example of one literally right over there.
How big is it?
Like big.
Go grab it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right.
I need scale. I need to see like the scale of this thing. Okay, so what's the difference between that and a yoga ball? Because that just looks like a yoga ball to me.
I think
it doesn't look very courageous. I don't know where the courage is coming from this ball. It looks very yoga-ish.
So it's not. It's spelt. I'm pronouncing it courageous. It's not spelt that way.
Oh. Okay.
Jill Miller's inflatable 9-inch ball is used primarily for global gut smashing. It's a little bit sticky, so you can tack the ball into a spot and work on the dreaded Sosa, available at yogatune-up.com. However,
gut smashing. That sounds like fun.
Right. However, they also show on the in the introduction to part 3, like, alternatives if you don't have access to these things. He also, gives websites and things like that. But he mentions the lacrosse ball, which is my favorite, by the way. Like, I like to just stick a lacrosse ball in the arch of my foot and just roll my foot on top of it. Dude, it'll change your life. I'm just telling you right now.
Okay.
Just do that.
Okay. I think I have a lacrosse ball somewhere.
Or
find one.
Yeah, right. Or, you're a martial artist, so I would say use a lacrosse ball. If you don't spend a lot of time like kicking and like conditioning your feet, maybe start with a tennis ball first and roll the tennis ball in the arch of your foot. But I have to use a lacrosse ball, otherwise I don't really feel anything.
Yeah.
But softballs, soccer balls, barbells, kettlebells,
Okay.
monster bands, double lacrosse balls. So those are all for like level 2 of mobilization.
Monster bands are just the big rubber bands, right?
Yeah, like the big rubber bands, but not like the ones not like the ones with the handles. There are literally the giant rubber bands.
Giant rubber bands. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The resistance bands. I hate the handle ones. The handle ones suck.
They're good for specific instances, for specific things. But if you don't have those certain apparatuses, yeah, they're not good.
Yeah.
And then level 3 mobilization tools. If you ever go down like the yoga aisle at Walmart or Target and you see those strange plastic rollers that all have knobs on them and look like torture devices.
Sure.
That's what they are. They are tools.
We'll put up a picture because
We'll put up graphics and stuff like that. But like I mean, if you're not watching this, I have my lacrosse ball, my murder ball, right here.
Why do you call it a murder ball?
And I call it a murder ball because I knew a girl when I went to school.
From a lacrosse ball?
Well, one, if you took a lacrosse ball to the face, you could die.
Okay, that's fair.
But I knew a girl on my college's lacrosse team. This is a tangent, by the way. On my college's lacrosse team, who lived outside of the city of Philadelphia, not the best area, who carried a bag of lacrosse balls in her car, not just for practice, but to protect herself.
Like a blackjack?
To whip at someone, or because she couldn't make a fist, but she could hold a lacrosse ball and smash it into the side of someone's head.
Wait, when you say whip, you mean throw it at someone or like a blackjack?
That's why she to throw it at someone.
Oh, I thought like you put it in a sock and then whip it like that.
I mean, you could too, but she would also hold it in the palm of her hand and use it.
Don't do this, anyone listening. This is
this was a young female college student walking home alone at night outside of the city of Philadelphia, which is a very bad place. So she referred to them as murder balls, and it kind of stuck with me. I'm sorry.
Got it.
Regardless.
Sure.
So, like, one of the things that it talks about to do with the lacrosse ball, when I had this thing on my neck, right?
Yeah.
So they talk about, I'm going to move my headset here, right?
Yeah.
They talk about, right, just like massaging it along your jaw and your jaw muscle. And like, you don't think about this muscle at all. But dear Lord, it feels good. Like, to just to loosen up that. And then, of course, you have it right here. Go down. And then what I was doing on this, right, when this was hurting, right, you stick it in, stick it along that fascia, along this tendon, you twist it into place, and then you arc your neck in that direction, right? And you work it all along. And it's a way for you to basically get deep into the tissue so that you can start regaining the ability to do the mobilization. And like there are great pictures on here of all different options that you can do, and then it moves on to the back. And again, we'll throw graphics up so you can see, like, each of the sections in the back of the book says, hey, this is exactly what this section deals with.
Mhm.
Are you experiencing pain here? Right? So
It's almost like a
yeah.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Mhm.
It's not like it's not written like in chapters. It's not like this is chapter 1, then you read chapter
Right.
2, chapter 3. This is like it's almost like a choose your own adventure. And
Right.
that's like, I don't know if that's weird, but like Goosebumps or like those old
No,
choose your own
that's actually
adventures where you like
that's actually a really good
you look for it.
good way.
If you want to fix your neck, go to page 23. Okay. You got
Right.
shot and died. Oh, wait, no. But yeah,
But no,
like,
they're very much like the book is very much split into like if you want to get into the philosophy behind all this, read part 1. If
Got it.
you feel good and you're already like able to move, start in part 2. And then part 2 is even broken up into those 3 sections of movement, right? 2 and 3 for athletes and people who are looking to optimize. Movement section 1 is for the people who are just looking to make sure that what they're doing at the gym isn't hurting or hindering what they're doing in their actual life.
right.
Are you in pain? And do you not have the range of motion that you know you should? Okay, flip to the back to part 3,
Mhm.
and now use the map. The map is so cool. Now use the map, go exactly to the section, right? Go exactly to the section that is in pain, that you want to see optimization, and then it breaks it down into, all right, if you have like 0 mobility or you haven't done mobility here for this area of your body, start here. Have you been mobilizing this area of your body for a month now? Okay, well now do this to get deeper. Now do this to get deeper. And the mobilization exercises, like they're anything from like you can do them for like 15 seconds daily in that area. I don't think any of them are.
I mean,
like I
that's
didn't
like
go through the whole body, but like
it's very
they're meant,
non-committal. 15
right?
seconds a day.
They're meant to do things to work on getting yourself to the place where you can move back into section 2, where now you're looking at the movement categories, and now you're making sure that your posture is right and things like that. So these are meant for 15-second to maybe 5-minute maintenance. I think that's what he calls all the stuff in part 3. Part 3 is the maintenance of your body, of your machine, where part 1 is the philosophy of why you need maintenance. Part 2 would be, how to properly use your machine, right? How many of us, when we buy a car, actually open the glove box and read through the owner's
actual manual?
None of us.
Listen, hey,
None of us.
I've looked through the manual to fix stuff before.
When something breaks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, okay,
when
listen.
something breaks.
Listen.
So
You might be right
listen,
there, but hold on.
I'm the same way. The same way. And that's the problem with our bodies
does this
too.
light mean?
Is
Flip through
right.
the book.
The problem with our bodies is that we ignore them until something hurts. And the problem is we should be paying attention to this stuff in our 20s and teens earlier, right? When our bodies can adjust for doing dumb things.
Or
right?
when they're not more susceptible, but like more ready to be, like they're more malleable.
Right.
So like,
and ready to be trained properly.
Right. And you don't have all of these bad habits that are like overlaid over top. So this book seems like it has a lot of info in it.
Absolutely.
And I would
I'll
love
be reading
to go into it more, but honestly, I'm probably just going to end up like you sold me in the book. Good job. We have no connection to the author, like we had said before. This just came up randomly in conversation, and I've been one of my own personal goals has been to become more mobile, to gain weight, muscle weight, and so being in the gym a lot. There was a whole like stretch of 2 days where I was so sore. I had done a heavy leg workout 2 days before, and then the day before I had done a heavy chest workout, and that was painful. So this is stuff that I would be super interested in knowing more about, and so I pick up the book. I think this is really cool. Like I said, would love to talk more about it with you on the podcast, but it might be after I've read more of it, and we could probably go into more of like a post-mortem, if you will, of trying some of this stuff. So a return to the return of the Supple Leopard, the revenge of the Supple Leopard, if you will.
The revenge. First Blood, Rambo 3. Rambo 3 Part 2,
Yeah.
First Blood.
But yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is really cool, and I don't know, anyone else who's is feeling the same way that I would recommend getting the book, apparently, because
Listen,
I'm gonna get it.
like you said, we're not affiliated with this gentleman. I think that he's genius. I love how his perspective on things. I love how he communicates his ideas. It's great. If you at all are interested in health, period, this is like there. I remember growing up, there'd be like some people who just like have a copy of Grey's Anatomy for no reason. Like, you're not a doctor, you're not in the medical field, but it's a medical book that it has like basically like internal maps of like the human anatomy.
Oh, is that why they named the show Grey's Anatomy?
Yes, that's why they named the show Grey's Anatomy.
Opera. I was like, why would you have a novel of Grey's? I thought it was like based on a book or something, not like an actual medical textbook.
It's a medical textbook called Grey's Anatomy, and like it's technically it's a textbook that constitutes bibliographically. Wow, that's not a word. It constitutes as a classic. Like, you can find it under classic literature. I would recommend anyone.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I would recommend this the same way that people would have that on their shelves. Like, if you're interested in movement, like I move 50-pound bags of dog food. That's the average weight of the bags of dog food. Some is lighter, some is heavier. Daily, moving giant pallets around by hand, like stocking shelves.
Right.
I was not working out once I got this job because I would come home and I would be so sore. And the next day I'd have to get up and do it all over again, and I'd have no motivation. I started thinking about these archetypes of body position, these positional archetypes, and these methods of movement, and I started applying them to moving my dog food, to my daily job. And like, it's still tiring, it's still heavy work, but you know what? My body is weathering it better. So I would highly recommend this book just for anyone just to have on the shelf. I'm going to return to it often. I'm going to reference it. Karen's got some stuff that's been bothering her and her back, so we're going to go probably to the back page, to the back section, and we're going to, do some, not self-diagnosis, but self-correctiveness.
Choose your own adventure. You're going to go on a
choose our own adventure towards a better life.
That was better than what I was thinking, but we won't
towards better life and a more mobile one.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, this is I'm excited for our season 2 of this podcast and all the stuff that we have ahead of us.
I'm too.
We hope that if you're listening to this, that you examine your life and you do not go a day without asking questions and wondering and trying to be 1% better than you were yesterday.